Combustion has to be the most redesigned ability in the history of the game, its purpose and function being completely redesigned over 5 times. In beta WoW, Combustion was a fire talent on a 5-minute cooldown, and would make your next fire spell have a 100% chance to crit. Pretty standard stuff as far as early talents go. Then, later on in Vanilla, towards the end of that expansion, or can't really call Vanilla WoW an expansion, can you? Towards the end of Vanilla WoW, Combustion was changed for the first time. Now Combustion would give you a stacking crit buff, starting at 10% and adding up until you scored 3 crits. Then the buff would just go away, all on a 3-minute cooldown. This version of Combustion worked very similar to how Fireball works for Fire Mages today, in that it will get a stacking crit buff for the spell by 10% until you get a crit. This is how the talent worked pretty much all the way through BC and early Wrath. Then towards the later half of Wrath, it got a small change. Not a redesign like previously, in which, while the buff was active, you also did 50% more crit damage with fire spells. So in addition to gradually increasing your crit chance, it made those 3 crits you'd get from this spell even bigger. Just as a little side note, WoW actually doesn't have too many ways of increasing your crit damage. Crit damage, of course, being effects that only increase your damage on crits. In fact, for the longest time, spells didn't even do double damage on crits, only 50% more damage. You pretty much had to take talent points to make the crits do double damage, like physical attacks would do baseline. And very few classes had talents or abilities to do more than double damage with a crit. I think the philosophy behind Blizzard's design choice with this is that they don't want crits to play a big role in combat, as it's largely based on luck, and relying on luck would be like gambling every time you did battle. And crit chances have always been pretty low in WoW anyway, but that's pretty much how Fire Mages played anyway, relying on crits for everything. And Combustion making those crits even bigger was like icing on the cake. This didn't last too long, however, as come Cataclysm, Combustion saw its second redesign. This redesign is arguably the most popular version of the spell. What it would now do on a 2-minute cooldown was combine all your dots on the target and create a new super dot that would do just as much damage. Now this super dot was pretty good on its own, and required some experienced play to use it with the perfect Ignite dot. Ignite was an ability that would put a dot on the target based on around 40% of what your last fire spell crit did to the target. Ignite itself has gone through all kinds of changes itself, so I'm not going to go into them. Just know that's generally how Ignite worked. But what really made Combustion shine was its interaction with Fire Blast and its Impact talent. Impact had a chance on all damaging spells to reset the cooldown of Fire Blast, allowing it to stun for 2 seconds, and spread all your dots on the target to everything within 12 yards, including the Super Combustion dot. This interaction gave mages the best AoE in the game, as they were able to spread a super dot to multiple targets with no kind of damage cap. It was such good AoE DPS that there was no way it would stay in the game for long. It made having fire mages on ad fights almost required, since it made them so much easier. Well, you might think that, but it stayed pretty much the same throughout the entire expansion. You see, a few other classes also had some pretty damn good AoE, like Survival Hunters and Frost DKs. Not as good as Fire Mages, but still pretty good since theirs wasn't tied to a cooldown. Also, Combustion was pretty hard to use correctly for the average player, and most people just use an add-on to tell them when to use Combustion because of the way Ignite worked. Blizzard pretty much changed everything around Combustion rather than touch the spell itself, to kinda balance it out in Cataclysm. Then come Mist of Pandaria, and Combustion's third redesign. The Mist of Pandaria Combustion was a short 45-second cooldown, 3-second stun that would do some fire damage up front, reset the cooldown of Infernal Blast, and then put a dot on the target equal to the combined damage of the Ignite and Pyroblast dot on the target, and only those 2 dots. Then Combustion went through a few more changes throughout the expansion, and it finally ended up with only doing dot damage equal to Ignite's damage, and only 20% of the damage Ignite was currently doing on the target. On top of that, Infernal Blast, the new spell created that was basically just a combination of the old Fire Blast and Impact talent, would only spread dots to 3 additional targets. 4 if you glyphed it. So mages went from having a super dot that combined all their dots on the target and could be spread to an infinite amount of adds and kata, to a weak dot that only did 20% of the damage of only one of your dots that could only be spread to 4 extra targets. Kind of a big step down from his glory days. In Warlords of Draenor, Combustion was altered slightly. It no longer did direct upfront damage, nor stun the target, but it did go back to doing 100% of Ignite's damage instead of only 20%. Still didn't combine any other dots though, and Infernal Blast allowed you to spread the dots to 5 targets now, instead of only 3 with its Draenor perk, which was neat, I guess, and that's pretty much how the ability worked throughout the rest of Warlords. Now we get to Combustion's 4th and final redesign in Legion. Combustion now, on a 2-minute cooldown, will increase your chance to crit by 100% and convert whatever crit you had previously into Mastery for 10 seconds. That way your crit stat won't be useless during the 10-second buff, making it work like a buffed up version of its second form, where instead of granting a stacking crit buff that goes away after 3 crits, you instead just get as many crits as you can jam into a 10-second window, which is quite a lot with how many instant Pyroblasts you'll be proccing during the crit fest. While it may not be as overpowered as its Cataclysm version, it is still probably the second best version of itself currently. So that's it. That's the history of Combustion. The spell had 5 different functions in its lifetime up till now. Its first form was a one-time crit buff on a long cooldown. Its second form was a longer crit buff that gave bigger crits. Its third form was a super dot that could be spread to an infinite amount of targets. Its fourth form was just a weaker version of its third form, but with a stun. And its fifth form is an arguably better version of its second form, just with more crits. If you have an idea for an interesting History of WoW video, just let me know in the comments. It doesn't have to be about a spell or class ability. It could be anything as long as it's interesting. And WoW related, of course. Also, you should give the video a like. It really helps the video out by giving it higher search rankings and increasing the chance that YouTube will promote it, giving it more views. There's a reason every YouTuber tells you to like videos at the end of their videos. It legitimately does help the video. And you significantly increase the chances someone will like the video if you simply tell them to. It's like basic psychology. Same with subs too, but I'm not going to tell you to sub to my channel. Chances are, most of the people watching this video are already subscribers anyway.